Hi everyone, it's Ket McCorner here from Enterprise Lab. I hope you're well and welcome to another episode of the League of Disruptors Show. So as I said earlier in previous shows, we've got a jam-packed week this week full of amazing experts that are coming online to share their genius more with you so you can step into yours really more than anything else. So today I have the one and the only Andrea Pennington. Andrea, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Ketten?
Very, very good. So for those of you viewing just now, Andrea Pennington is the CEO and founder of Make Your Mark Global. She's absolutely disrupting the space for personal branding and branding of businesses and helping people shed into their expertise so they can actually become more of an extensive brand out there in the world. I think there's some amazing work that you've been doing, Andrea, and we're going to be really stepping into some of this stuff. But I thought we'd kick off with a little bit more about who you are, what you've been doing, and how you've got to where you are today. So would you love to share that with the audiences?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, well, I am an American living in the south of France, and what I do is I help people really get clear on their communication. So communicating with the world through your brand presence, whether that's your website, your books, TV appearances, or being on stage, it all comes down to communication. So that's really my passion. I started my career off as a medical doctor and specialized in anti-aging medicine. And over the last, 18 years that I've been a physician, I really noticed that kind of at the fundamental core of true well-being is this fundamental self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. And when we really accept who we are and we're aware of who we really are, then it influences our communication. And it starts with how we communicate to ourselves, and then how we embody that self-concept to the world. And about 16 years ago, I started working for Discovery Communications and served as the medical director and spokesperson for Discovery Health Channel. So it allowed me to be on TV, behind the camera, overseeing scripts. And coming from the world of documentary television and news, it's all about storytelling.
Yes.
So I'm able to now bring together my life as, doing all this positive psychology and mindfulness, combined with communication in the media to, lead this company called Make Your Mark Global.
Awesome. So, and when did you start Make Your Mark Global?
I started it just a year and a half ago. It really sort of grew out of my work with a company called Pennington Empowerment Media, where I was doing more corporate branding and corporate communications. And then with three amazing women from Iceland, we, co-founded Make Your Mark Global to become a boutique agency for more personal branding. So my expertise is really now translating what I've done with corporate, huge billion-dollar brands, and now helping these new disruptors, these new change makers who are really, passionate about what they have to give, but helping them really level up their game in the way that they present themselves to the world, but also their internal work. Because as you know, being an entrepreneur, you've done it, right? So being a successful entrepreneur and having multiple successes really requires an internal mindset and an internal state of true well-being if you want a sustainable career. So that's what I'm doing now.
Amazing. And you mentioned the words like disruptor and change maker, and you are truly global with where you've come from, where you live, the people that you've connected with to start up the ventures and the projects and stuff that you do. But coming back to that word disruptor and a change maker, what is it? Because sometimes I feel that some people are actively overconscious that they believe that they're disruptors and change makers, and others are completely unconscious to the fact that what they're doing. What to you defines a disruptor or a change maker?
The way I see it, it's someone who's willing to go against the grain, think outside of the box, challenge the status quo. And you're right, sometimes it's not conscious. Sometimes the creatives that I work with, they are just sort of tapped into a whole different consciousness on their own. So they have a new way of seeing the market or a new way of seeing problem solving. But when you start to bring the consciousness element into it, to me, that's when it gets fun. Because that's when you can say, wow, I'm seeing that there are skills and talents that I or my team has. There are these challenges in the marketplace that no one's really addressing, sometimes at the core level, or they're going about it the wrong way. And so these change makers are people who are willing to do things a little bit, unorthodox, or with a new set of creative skills that can dramatically improve or transform either the marketplace, companies, even countries. I work with people who are doing global change within nations, and that's what I see as disruptors and change makers.
Amazing, because it's one of the things that I resonate a lot with, and I believe that the world needs a lot more disruptors. Disruption, or the word disruption, and being disruptive can be taken as a negative connotation. But I believe that there is positivity and negativity that comes from this, but you need both sides of this to evoke that change, and that change really is for evolution, and that evolution is to spark prosperity. So we talk about different types of energies here. You work with so many different, you're working with countries, you're working with companies, you work with individuals. What is it about the energy that a disruptor or a change maker has that actually gives, or that you feel that you then sort of believe into? Because as I say, there's a lot of unconsciousness, and I think a lot of your work, especially when you're talking about branding people and shining their expertise, it's all about making them realize more about how much of an expert they are. There are some people in this industry who are doing stuff completely unattuned to the fact that they are changing futures, and they seem to have this very sort of relaxed energy about this. What's for you when someone comes to you and says, Andrea, I need you to make me a global brand. What are the things distinctively that you look for in terms of energy, and then their expertise and what they've done? What's the key things that people you try to look for in people?
That's a great question. You and I have talked before about authenticity, and for me, that's the number one thing. It's about building an authentic brand. So what does that mean? That means that first and foremost, I get to know my client's sort of mindset and literally what their soul calling is. And that sounds kind of woo-woo, but for me, I'm just at a point in my career where I can be very selective with who I work with. And so it's really about identifying at a soul level. Are you in business or in this, company because you feel that fundamentally it is part of your life's purpose? And that's kind of where it all starts for me, because if they really feel that this is their soul's calling, then that means that we can take it to a whole nother level than if it's just your ego or you're trying to make money. And so that's the first thing. It's like getting a sense of what do you truly value. I know someone else that you may know there in the UK is Joe Simpson, and values is at the very core of what I do, both personally in psychological work as well as with companies. Because when we can match up what you truly value as an individual and what your soul's calling is, we bring that together with what this market opportunity is. And for my clients, they need to have a niche that has at least 1 million people in it. And for most people, that's very easy, but it requires that we really get focused on the value that they're going to bring to that niche. So when we can be conscious about your values, your personality, the type of lifestyle, because going global, I have a client who said, yeah, I'm ready to go global. I have this book, I have this concept, I'm teaching in English, and English isn't her first language, but she thought, I'm ready. And I said, okay, this is fabulous. Now, what's the kind of lifestyle you want? And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, if we flip the switch and we start getting people in the UK and in the USA looking at your product and they like it and they believe it can transform, you're going to be called for radio, you're going to be called for TV, you're going to be called on podcasts, bloggers are going to want to interview you, and then there's the stage, because she's a great teacher, you're going to be on stages. Are you ready for that? And she just got this pale look on her, the blood drained from her face, and she thought, oh, I didn't think about that. And so you really have to be thinking about your personality, and are you willing to put in that kind of energy that it takes to really be a global brand? Now, that doesn't mean that you couldn't do just information products and have a website that delivers online courses and that kind of thing. But when you really want to have the impact, and I know that's something that you talk a lot about, is that influence, that impact that we have.
Yes.
You have to be conscious of that going in, because that's what you're really building toward. It's that impact.
So it's yeah, no, absolutely, and I suppose it's an interesting concept or point that we get to, because obviously as business owners, most businesses are micro businesses here that in the UK and fundamentally across many other sort of countries and regions, we start as a one person or a two person sort of micro business. It's where you start to evolve the identity and the culture of your business. But I think sometimes business owners become lost in their personal identity. They think they kind of hide behind the business itself. What you've just been talking about here is more about the personality of the individual.
Yes.
And I think it's something that I echo a lot in terms of the sentiment to my clients and the people that I work with, that on one side you're producing identity of what your business does and the value it provides, but people buy in two different ways. The consumer buys not only the business and the value, but also who you are as an individual and what you stand for. And in fact, I think the latter comes first. If they can't see you, then they can't see the business. Do you find that this is a common trait with people that come in and that you work with, where they haven't really put together sort of the thoughts on what my personal brand is all about, and who am I and what's my identity out there in the market? I mean, for me, for the last 5 years, all I've been doing is saying the word disruptive, 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 disruptive. I think I've talked myself into just that word. And then people are like, what does that mean? And I think it means different things to different people. But essentially, for me, the drive and the value for me is that one trigger line, which is, if I can change your perception by 1%, I can change your results by 100%. And that's, but it's taken me 5 years to almost get to that kind of strap line and thought. Do you find that, is this something that's common for people? It takes them a little bit, time to actually build through. And is this the kind of stuff that your agency really works on to sort of unearth in people?
Yeah, boy, that's a loaded. There are multiple layers there. So, the first thing is, I will say that the marketplace has changed. So what you've just described, since 2008, there are so many more micro businesses, so many more entrepreneurs, mompreneurs, and wannabe-preneurs who are being faced with this challenge. How do I launch a business, whether it's just a small consulting business or coaching, or it's actually a product or service-based business? How do I launch this and get enough attention so that I'm sustainable? So what we've noticed is a shift in the way that consumers are working. And it's just as what you described. People want to connect with people. There's been so much distrust after, banking collapse, and don't even get me started on the political regimes, that people right now want to connect with humans, not some brand that has a logo and some slick look to it. They want to connect at a heart level. So yes, I do get people that are saying, okay, so just help me create a website and a tagline. And they think that that's magically just going to work for them. And it's like, no, people want to see who is behind that company. So what do you stand for? What do you value? Why did you even launch this company? Why is this so important to you right now? And what do you really see as the value for this potential client? What are you really trying to connect with in their life? Not just about selling them stuff. Like, what transformation are you looking to achieve in their life? Now, of course, these are the kind of people that come to me. So it's a very deep psychological bit of work to get people to recognize that even if I do have a company name or a product, I am the face, I am the voice, I am the messenger of that brand. So that means everybody is a personal brand. So it's just like you've done the work to kind of realize, okay, I'm all about disruption. I want to interview people. I want to give my own views. It's all about disruption. Like, you've got that clarity and what you're going to transmit. And that's the kind of work that I do with clients. It's to really get down to the core of it, and then help people step into that. Like you fully, there's no doubt about you, Ken. You fully embody it. It's like everything you're doing, the way you write, the way you talk, you are just all about disrupting and causing people to think in new ways, right?
Yeah.
And that's the power of a personal brand. When you so fully represent it, then people feel it. They know what they're going to experience with you. They know what the promise is.
Yes.
And those are the core elements of a brand. And the reason I speak so passionately about it is because I've had the exact opposite experience. So I mentioned that I worked for Discovery, and I don't think I told you about this when you and I spoke last month. When I worked for Discovery, when I first got there, I was hired as the medical director. And I immediately went to the head of programming and I said, hey, I'd like to host one of these documentaries. I had been an actor. I had worked in TV in my college days. And he said, Andrea, you have a face for TV, but you look too young. Nobody's going to believe that you're a doctor. And I was like, what? So do you know, Ketan, for the first year that I was at Discovery, they didn't put me on TV. I was just overseeing the content. I was recruiting medical doctors to help us with the online stuff. But there was a changing of the guard. We had a new president come in who was over Discovery Health and Discovery Health Online. And he came to me one day and he said, I have a vision for your role. And I'm just kind of like, oh, really? And he said, I'd like for you to anchor the news. And then he came up with this other show. He's like, it's called Amazing Baby Videos. I'd like for you to host the show and explain medically why kids are doing. And I thought, really? But as soon as they put me on as the news anchor, and as soon as they put me on my own show, they tried to transform the way I looked. So my hair, my makeup, the way they dressed me. You can see the old clips. You'll see it even the first time I was on the Oprah show versus the second time I was on the Oprah show. There's a big difference. But here's the thing. It was not sustainable. Because as soon as I was on TV for a whole year, every single day, suddenly people were recognizing me in the streets. And I was like, oh no, they think I'm that boring news person who's just so know-it-all. And like they had hired a coach to help me deliver the news with a certain tone. And that's ultimately why I want people to do the conscious work themselves. Because if you don't define your brand, someone else will, either in their own imagination or just based on what they see. And so for me, I got to a point where I was miserable because I had everything that you would think was successful. I had the multi-million-dollar business. I had built a wellness center, had my first book out, all that stuff. And I wasn't feeling fulfilled because I wasn't being the real me.
Wow.
And that's why I say when you're building a personal brand, you want to make sure it's aligned with who you really are and who you feel good about getting up and being every day.
I totally agree. And in fact, it's a coherent subject or topic that comes up with all the people that I've pretty much interviewed on this show. I mean, yesterday we had the wonderful Vanessa. She's only 10 years old. Motivational speaker. She, one of the first books she read was Rich Dad Poor Dad, and she's leagues beyond her sort of age in terms of confidence and stuff. And just someone her age that just said, look, you really got to love what you do. You've got to do it with, you've got to give the value and serve without the expectation of reward, and the rewards that you will receive, I'm kind of ad-libbing a little bit, but it will go beyond your expectations of just financial reward. And I think the reason, I suppose, the industries does that, especially like the TV industry, obviously they need to have some particular profile that fits the show that they're putting together, which is, I understand that. But you yourself, just like others that I've interviewed, have found there was a part of your life where you just felt, I've got certain fulfillments, but the most important thing to me, which is my happiness, which is my content, is not there. I'm almost a vessel for someone else as opposed to for myself. Exactly. And I think, and the reason I kind of talk about that now again is that the kind of people that are watching this show and coming in, and guys, make sure you're getting your questions in for Andrea as well, because we're only on for another 30 odd minutes or so basically. But the point I was getting to with this is that I think people are driven by this whole thing of I need to escape my job, so I want to create a business, or I can't find a job, so I'm going to create a business, or I can see my next door neighbor is thriving, on social media with his business or her business, so I think if they can do it, I can do it. Now, whatever the motivations are, that's one side, but I think it becomes, what I feel is people become different people. They're not their true selves when they're actually in business. They become all of a sudden. A lot of what I teach about is consumer behavior, and I talk about the fact that if you cannot buy your product as a consumer rather than the business owner without any biases, then why would you expect someone else to buy your product? And what I guess I'm trying to get to here is that there's this early stage expectation that you've got to become a hustler, as in, work hard, you've got to grind, you've got to do all the hours that God sends, you've got to be this, you've got to be this, you've got to be whiz at social, you've got to do all these different things. So you start wearing multiple hats. And I guess I'm trying to put this back to the time where you were casted for this show. They started to build this profile, and you weren't actually, eventually over time, you just weren't happy with that. Do you find that a lot of, a lot of people that come into the, your agency world have this whole thing where they've produced a persona, which is where they're not actually happy. They're running a business, or they've started a business, and you can actually immediately tell that they're not happy. And when you find that point, what's the first thing you do?
Yeah, I think that there's one distinction I'll make. Sometimes it's because they've created a persona that they're not happy with. But usually it's that they've created a business or a lifestyle that does not allow them to feel totally fulfilled and fully expressed. So most people aren't bound in a persona like I was. They just have reached burnout. So, a big part of the work I do is around resilience. It's about recovering from burnout and breakdowns and breakups, and at the core of it all, it's really about sustainability. So I know that you also know the wonderful Nick Haynes from the 5 Institute. So I look at energies, and so you talked about energies at the beginning. So the 5 Institute looks at the 5 elements of Chinese medicine, and I have 2 main types. One is wood and one is water. And the wood, I'm a disruptor. We're an innovator. We want to charge forth, and it's like, bring new things to the market. But my next energy in line is water. And water is all about this deep sustainability and managing risk and fear. And so for me, I just got to a point where I was so depressed, I was so burnt out with that, exactly what you've described, that working so many hours. So I had built a business alongside my TV career. So I had a wellness center, I had 15 employees, my mother was working with me, I had doctors, psychologists, a whole spa and salon. And what I noticed was, if I was on TV, sales were great. If I was out promoting a book, or if I was away from the wellness center, sales went down because people wanted me. So I built the business with the wrong kind of structure. And what else did I find? I found after a few years, I was depressed, I was anxious, because I was on this hamster wheel of working 80 hours a week to satisfy both places. So I'm fulfilling everyone else's needs, making great money, but I wasn't fulfilling myself. And that's the common denominator with many people that come to me. They've had at least 10, sometimes 20 years in business, either working in corporations or as consultants. And they've gotten to a point where they've burnt out and they realized, okay, this isn't sustainable. And now they're saying, how do I create a business that allows me to be really who I am and to thrive and to flourish? And so that's really the distinction. So it starts with, for me, at least for me, always looking at, if we create this big, beautiful thing, how are you going to sustain it? What is this really riding on? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, crystal. I've got some more stuff to add to that, but I just want to get into the audience because we've got lots of people joining in. We've got Bilal James, Beju Solanki, Carmen McAlsey in here, Jonathan Files here, Haroon Rabbani.
Hey, Haroon.
Haroon said, "Woohoo! Two of my bestest favorite disruptors in the world on one screen." So that's the wonders of modern technology, Haroon. Guys, make sure you're tuning in next week because actually Haroon's going to be on soon as well. So watch this space. Haroon says, "I posted on Facebook about reputation yesterday. What happens? What happens if an individual inadvertently or consciously damages their reputation?" And what happens to their brand? So I'm going to put a little twist on this and not the political thing. Let's take Mr. Trump, okay, to a certain extent. I think, he's gone through this whole motion of where he was when he was doing the Apprentice and as an entrepreneur, stands up for presidency. He kind of almost gets washed white with things. You mentioned at the top of this conversation about the fact that people want more human connectivity today. They're away from the gloss of a brand and an image. And I think a lot of what's going on politically in the world today is based on the fact that the policies and the way that politicians have worked has been very much brand imaged rather than the actual human intervention base. I think people are at this stage where they want this human base, but here is someone that I think has almost ripped his reputations to shreds and has now also got an element of brand repairing to do. Going back to what Haroon has suggested here is that if someone has inadvertently or consciously damaged their reputation, what happens to their brand, and I think I'm going to add to the question, what do they need to do to recover it?
Well, whether you're, someone like Donald Trump or you're just a regular person, the internet remembers every little thing you do, especially on social media. So if you kind of at least have that consciousness and that awareness right now, then you'll be mindful of everything you put out there. I was teaching at the University of Monaco corporate brand management, and we talked about all these big corporations who've either, had plane crashes or automobile mishaps, and how do they clean up their reputation. So it's the same thing for a big corporation as it is for a personal brand. It's owning up for your mistakes and correcting it by saying where you stand today. So I won't even go to Trump because that's a whole nother case. Yeah. But what we can do is make sure that everything we're putting out online is what we really stand for, knowing that the internet has an infinite lifespan, at least starting from right now. And that means that you need to be posting, whether it's on your LinkedIn profile, on your website, blogs, social media, what you stand for. And if you did make a mistake in the past, own it. And then come out and start your own cleanup process. So, we do this with celebrities who've, been caught drinking or caught cheating or whatever. And we just let them write their own blog piece, do an audio, do a video where they say, look, this is what I did. This is who I am today and what I truly value. I apologize for what I've done. Recognizing all of your mistakes. And then from this point forward, you make sure that you're always putting forth the positive image of who you really are. Because eventually, those are going to be the messages that pop up in the first page of Google. It's going to take you some time, but that's just the reality of this hyper-connected culture that we live in. It's not very fun. It's not very fast, but there are also services out there that do a lot of cleanup. But the first thing that you can do is own it.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I think that's the rule 101 on transparency. I think, we're all humans. We'll all make mistakes in that respect, and we're, and errors of judgments and stuff. Owning it is, as you've just said, it's that's the first thing. I think the second part to this is, like you mentioned, the internet is an infinite thing. The history and everything is there, even though it's kind of hidden away, but there are people that can unearth these things, etc. So you've got to be careful about what you post. But I want to get into that little bit about the future of our communications and stuff, because if you think about it, our TVs today are what our radios were, and I think our smartphones are now the future sort of television. Your channels like YouTube and Snapchat and Facebook and all these different social streams are now becoming the channels on our TVs. We have more consumers that access video, audio, and written content using these smartphone devices. So you mentioned a little bit just now in your response about the fact that you've got to be present, you've got to be visible, and you've got to be giving content. There's a lot of people out there that don't really understand what content is in that respect. So,
Okay.
could you give us a very simple kind of 1, 2, 3 step of what people could do potentially to maybe start raising their profile with content?
Sure. I mentioned some of the most basic ones that I know you and everyone else knows about, and that's blogging. So whether it's on your own personal website, your microblogging on Tumblr, and even your microblogging with Twitter. I mean, what we do with celebrity clients is we generally hire a PR firm so that you're really putting out an image on TV, on the radio, getting newspapers and magazines to interview you. I am so sorry,
That's
but
all right. She's a very busy lady. She's a very busy lady.
one of those things.
We are so happy to have you on, seeing as you're so busy. And as you can see on the live right now, this is what happens. This is the League of Disruptors Show. Someone's actually disrupting everything that's going on here. So while Andrea's actually taking that call, guys, if you're watching this, get your questions in. We've only got another 35 or 25 minutes to go, basically. Andrea Pennington's a best-selling author. She's got a countless number of books. She works on and specializes on building people's brands through their expertise, helping them to really lift out who they are as a person as much as their business is there as well. So it's kind of a situation that, what the work that Andrea's doing is to really help people kind of create an identity of who they are as a person. Sometimes we can get lost, and that happens from getting really busy in business. We can get lost in who we are and what we want to be and channel it out there. So essentially, get your questions in for Andrea. She's going to be on for another 20 to 25 minutes. But right now, we're going to get her back on, and she's just going to give us some more tips on the basis of what you need to do as an individual or as a business to start becoming more visible. And you, Andrea, you mentioned just then microblogging as one of the first kind of steps.
Yeah, so I apologize for that little interruption. I have a new book called Turning Points, and they're trying to deliver my books right now. So it's one of those things that he's like, I have all these boxes. So this is a very timely conversation because in this book I have 14 authors. So this is a classic thing. I have someone who will say to me, Andrea, I've been totally well known in this industry over here, but now I'm shifting. I'm now a coach or I'm a consultant. How do I tell the world who I really am? Or if I launch a website, they're going to be like, wait a minute, yesterday you were such and such, and now today you're claiming that you're a life coach or whatever. And so when you start blogging or creating cute little quote cards on Facebook, all of that is branding. Branding is just communicating who you are, what you stand for, and the promise that you're giving to your public. So I do believe in having a Twitter account, especially if you're an author trying to connect with your audience. But blogging is, I think, such a wonderful way because then we, as the artist or the author, can wax on philosophically. We can really set the record straight about who we are and what we value. And eventually that will bubble up. If you are in a profession where you work with, in a service-based business, for example, I really recommend that people work with LinkedIn. So that you create that visibility, because for most people, if you Google yourself and if you've been in a professional space for a while, your website hopefully will be number 1, and then LinkedIn is going to be number 2, and Facebook might be number 3, based on the number of posts. So it really is a matter of volume. So if you did something naughty, like some of our celebrities or people who've had drug addiction, that gets a lot of hits because every newspaper is writing about it. So it tends to saturate those first pages of Google results. So that means that we need to be creating more and more content. And whether that's, reaching out to other people so that you can be interviewed, doing like what you're doing, connecting with other experts, other people who can help you show off who you really are and what you care about. It's a huge part of this personal branding machine. But I always say at the end of the day, you need to be authentically you. So yes, it is a bit of a machine. Yes, you are cranking out, a blog post a week or a podcast a week, but always be considerate of the heart that you're bringing to it, because that's what people are going to pick up on. People will pick up on your fakery. If you're trying to be a copycat, trying to be the next, insert famous person here, people will pick up on that. They are calling for authenticity. And so that's what we have to lead with.
It's interesting you say that about the next whatever insert famous name, and I think that this is the real problem about it. I think people get inspired, and with a Richard Branson or a Tony Robbins, or because of where they are. People, I think, also forget, they only see the cap of the iceberg. They don't see everything else that's gone on, and there is only so much an expert of that level can actually tell you a story about what they went through. If you haven't experienced it yourself, you can't really understand that. I always believe that people can share the same pains, but they can never feel the pain exactly the same way, or they can't feel the pleasure the same way. We can all say, oh, we've been there, we've failed, or we've done this, or we've lost this, but no one can ever feel no one can ever feel the way you felt at that moment in time. I may have felt that feeling maybe 10 minutes after you did, but it's worlds apart, it's extremes apart already. When we talk about authenticity, a lot of my clients have this situation whereby they're making a transition from careers into business. They're slowly moving up, and it's one of the things that I say, you've got to be visible, otherwise people won't know you exist. I said that your visibility also needs to be done in a very staged way where people understand who you are and what you stand for. Otherwise, this is where you're talking about your identity. So what is your advice actually, where people may not do let's say, I don't want to do those little posts and where I put a picture and put a quote on, or I'm not really au fait with blogging just yet because I haven't got that kind of creative writing skill. I sometimes suggest to people to pick a topic within their industry or their region, and actually, even if the media's picked up on something, and I get them to actually put their opinion on the situation. What's your take on doing something like that to get yourself started, where you're actually putting your opinions out rather than actually trying to put these personal posts out? What's your advice and suggestions and thoughts on that?
That is a good starting place, particularly for someone who is conscious that they want to be seen as a leader or an expert in their niche. I also recommend doing review pieces. So if they can review a book, or they can review, a TED Talk, or, some other story that's going on in the current consciousness, if they give their unique take on it, then that's helping us to really get a sense of, their flavor, their spin. And something that you just said that really reminds me of this one principle is, even if you're in a similar industry to someone, you're a coach, or you're a weight loss expert, or a nutritionist, or a financial guy, even if there is, expert A who's been at it for 20 or 30 years, not everybody is going to resonate with expert A. So you brought up Tony Robbins. I love Tony's work. But there are people that I've recommended, hey, watch this video. And they're like, his voice, no, he's too hard. And likewise, I love Dr. Wayne Dyer. He endorsed my first book. I really loved his energy. But then there were people that were like, yeah, I listened to that audio you sent me and it just didn't. So here's the thing. Even if you have a similar expertise or a similar message, you are a different messenger. You have a different voice, you have a different energy and vibe, and that's going to land in the heart and the mind and maybe even the soul of your target audience and create that sense of resonance. So it doesn't matter if you're commenting on something and you're thinking, well, why would I comment on Simon Sinek when we're both doing the same thing? It's like, because you're giving a unique take that if someone didn't resonate with Simon or they had never heard of him, now they're associating you as an expert alongside him.
And this is my point, because I think sometimes people fear this whole thing of, oh, I shouldn't be giving my take on this because who am I to give this, and what if people backlash me? And on the flip side of this, there's this some people that I work with have this expectation that, you know, because you're putting yourself out there, what if I don't get the numbers of people? And I think to myself that, it all starts with one person. If you can interact and engage with one person, unconsciously you don't know how much of an impact you've made into that person's thoughts. And I think, whether you have one person watching this or 100,000 people watching this, it's not the volume of people, it's the consistency of the message that you're putting across, right? Yeah. So what with the clients that you work with, in terms of sort of doing getting that turnaround from that fear of getting their opinions out, and like you say, whether we're in the same industry, in the coaching and personal development industry, it's kind of exploded 110 million fold over the last 5 or 6 years. All of a sudden we have all these life coaches and personal development coaches and this coach and that coach. So it can be seen as a crowded space, but I'm a believer that there's enough cake for everyone. So there's not. Yes. So what is it that you would advise people on their approach to this? Because if they are, oh my God, I'm new to this, and why would someone listen to me rather than a Gary Vaynerchuk or a Tony Robbins, or what's the kind of practice that you enforce into your clients to do? So is it to do with small things, just do little things and constantly build, or do you think it's a situation that maybe they should want something quite significant and then drive from there? What's the sort of techniques that you adopt for them?
Yeah, for most people that come to me, they've already had a certain amount of experience. And so I ask them to kind of look back over the last year or the last 3 years or 5 years. Who have you touched? Have you made a difference in someone's life already? Because it's so funny, when I became a physician, I remember the very first week that I was in the hospital, a scared little intern. This mother comes out of this room. I was doing a pediatric rotation, and she was like, "Help my baby!" And I'm like, oh God, I'm the only one here. So I walk in, assess the situation. I start doing chest compressions. I'm like, oh my God, how does this baby not have a pulse? Call someone who really knows what's going on. And Ketan, I was there. I managed the whole situation. The attendings came. The baby survived. After that, the mother thought I was like, holy. But there were some of my colleagues, some people who had been, on rotation longer, who kind of looked at me like, who are you? And I'm thinking, my God, how quickly do we have that little fear response that's like, well, yeah, you're right. Who am I to be great or whatever? And after a while, I stopped telling people about it, because at first you think, oh my God, I just saved a life. And then later you're thinking, wait, but who am I to share that success? So what I ask people is, a year later when I got a birthday card from the mom, she was just like, you have to come to the birthday party because my baby wouldn't be here without you. Heavy. Maybe the baby would have been fine. I don't know. But what I ask people to do is kind of look through your life, and if you have touched one person, then that means there must be something good about what you do or what you say. Amazing. And you said something really critical. I ask people, you've heard this marketing adage where people say, if you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. So when I ask people to write, when they're doing a podcast, when they're doing an interview, they pretend that they're speaking to one single person. Because just what you said, if you touch one life, well, are you going to say only one life doesn't matter? It only counts if I have 100,000? Absolutely not, because that one person may share it with 10 other people, or you may so dramatically improve their life that they go on to be the next president 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. And that was all because of one little thing you did. So it's about getting out of the ego and this comparison and this judgmental frame and say, what is the real impact that I want to have?
Yeah.
If I could change one life, would it be worth it? And if not, then you're in the wrong business.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of people that I work with, these change makers. If you aren't committed to changing one life, then we aren't even going to set out to change a million.
I think you're absolutely spot on. The reason I kind of raised this is the fact that, for the last couple of shows, we've been talking about how people need to invest in themselves to, and be able to show their skin, that they've got skin in the game. And that's kind of from a service industry base that, when professionals charge fees, they need to know that you're invested into it as much as they need to invest. But this is a different type of investment. This is more of a heart investment, and I love the way that you brought this whole piece out, that don't think about talking to mass audience, just pick one person. As if you're talking to one person, the spotlight's on one person. The way you narrate, the way you write, the way you feel, the heart that comes out of this is completely different. In fact, I'll be honest with you, it's something that I do when I'm on stage. I have a mix of 10 people in an audience right up to 5,000 or 6,000 people in an audience. But when I get on stage, I don't address a whole audience. My talk is based as if I'm talking to just one person in the audience, and then I kind of scan the room as I go along in that respect. And my feedback is that I normally get is that you made me feel like I'm the only person that you're talking to. And I think that kind of connection is just phenomenal. And so, I mean, that tip about, just writing and whatever it is that you're communicating, do it as if you're doing it to just one individual. It's just stunning.
It is, because, especially because I used to work with a lot of healers because I'm a doctor. And so I'd get these people who would say, okay, I have this approach to dealing with anxiety, but I'm not the next, insert famous person over here. And I said, it doesn't matter. Have you helped people one-on-one? Have you helped families? And they're like, yeah, I remember this kid whose life totally changed, this CEO who couldn't do this and this, who now can. I said, then that's what you focus on. You focus on the fact that there is something in you. And I believe that people who are truly gifted, they tap into this genius frequency. It could be divine, it could be whatever you want to call it. And if God or the divine or whatever genius frequency you're tapped into gave you that ability, then it was not to be sat upon. It is to be used and to be transmitted. So we have to get out of that comparing yourself to some standard, whether it's a standard already in society or it's one that we make up, right? We all have this thing, well, if I'm really going to be accepted, then I need to have this and this and, check all of these boxes. Get rid of it. Get rid of it.
I mean, I feel that you step into your genius when you are actually fundamentally the most happiest. It's, I had Andrea carry on Friday, and we were talking about states of happiness and that we need to touch back into our inner child to get into that state. But I fundamentally find I'm the most productive and I get to my most genius spot when I'm actually happy. I've got nothing to worry about in my, nothing around me is impacting me negative or positively. I just feel like, there's a spring in my step. I can do whatever I want, and that's when I feel my. Do you think that there is a link with positive energy, happiness, and your genius?
I do. I believe very strongly in the concept of flow. We that study positive psychology, and you've probably read the book Flow by Milhai Csikszentmihalyi, where he and many people now have studied across cultures, across different socioeconomic levels and countries and cultures. When people are in that state of flow that you described, where we lose sense of ourself, we lose all track of time, we're using our skills and talents, usually with a little bit of enough effort that we have to put effort in. we get to that state of contentment. And it's not just because we're earning money or getting a pat on the back, it's that we're fully expressing ourselves. And that's when, I've met with people like Michael Jordan and Beyonce and all these people who get into a state where you were like in a whole nother world. And they're like, yep, I was in flow. And I believe that when we set up our work, our play, our relationships, where we get to be in our full strengths, where we get to be in flow, then there's a lot less of the anger, irritability, pessimism, judgment, anything that would weigh us down. And so again, that's why the process that I do with clients is all about finding what's really going to get you into that state of flow where your work doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. And yes, you still match that to a market opportunity where you can actually make a difference that people would pay for. But then it becomes much more sustainable. Don't you find that when you're doing that, when you're in that state, you personally, you don't walk away feeling, lowered in your energy? Yeah, you may have extended energy, but you feel like it was a net positive, like Absolutely. Mentally and emotionally, you're just like, that charged me up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, my sort of ethos is I work when I'm most productive. So when I feel happy, that's when I do my work. When I'm not in that productive state, I almost switch off. Whether it's I go to listen to an audiobook, or I go and listen to music, or I'm not really a walker or a runner or anything like that. Sometimes I actually go and indulge in a box set series just to escape for a little while. Yeah. And and then for me, I have these triggers in the day. It's like almost as if you're getting your caffeine jolt and all of these different jolts that come in throughout the period of the day where I could have 20 to 30 minutes of pure genius productiveness. And what I do is when I get into that zone, that's when I do my work. When I'm not in those zones, I try not to do the work, because the other side to this, and I know we've only got sort of 6 or 7 minutes to go, and I've got to take some comments from the audience in a second, is that you can work too hard at your personal branding. You can overkill it, in the fact that you're trying to prove points, and then what you end up doing is undoing the greatness that you've actually created. So, I think that people, when they're in that, when they're in that happy state and they're competent and they feel like the energy and they're going at it, they want that ride to last forever, and they kind of, I think people try and stretch it out. But what is your advice or recommendation of the fact to know that these jolts will come in small amounts, and it could come on consistency, or they can be drawn out? And what is it? What would you say is a telltale sign that now you're stretching your hope to stay in this happy mode for as long as possible? Is there any indicators that you've experienced that people can show that after a small period of time, actually they're now becoming overproductive, and this is going to be a killer rather than a builder?
Yeah, I think the first thing I draw from is my own experience with burnout. It's a matter of what can you do consistently to produce the effects that you want? What is going to be sustainable? And you mentioned something. It's like recognizing that everything happens in moments. There are moments, and if we can string these micro moments of flow, of pleasure, of contentment, of success, that's when we create a life that feels like it's meaningful and valuable. But it's recognizing that it happens moment to moment. So the more presence, the more awareness, the more consciousness that we can bring to say, okay, what's the energy am I bringing? Am I bringing that frantic, I gotta get this, I gotta compete energy, which I know is going to burn me out long term? I know it's going to create a negative vibe in the marketplace. Or am I coming from a state of abundance where I know my gifts, I know my talents, not cocky, but I know that I can make a difference. I'm in that flow state. Okay, if I can get into that energy and string more of those moments together, then we're creating a life that's pleasurable. So I don't look at branding as this one-off event. Give me my website and give me my logo and then I'm done.
Yeah.
No. It's a consistent and continual process. You've probably heard how many times Jay Abraham has told people that you really need to focus on the lifetime value of your client. So if we recognize that we are here to be a lifelong companion to our clients, then you don't think of it as this one-off shot in the dark. It's like, let's build a relationship where we can continue to transform and empower and inspire over the long haul. And you do that through communication.
And that's exactly what you say, and it's moments of that. It's an understanding that there are fragment moments which, when we start to jot those lines together, it creates this whole sort of journey in terms of relationship. It's, you know, sometimes I think we can honestly mistake the relationship that we have as a business to a consumer that it is. We've only got a limited amount of time, a limited amount of attention, and we must get our message out as quickly as possible and have this false expectation that people need to buy, when actually that's the very thing that puts people off. I think, you know,
Yeah.
And I love this whole thing of thinking about it as in, you know, apart from just speaking to your audience as if you're only speaking to one person, but understand that there are going to be moments. And these moments
Yes.
will put through that. That's sensational. I need to get some comments in because we're running out.
Okay, I have to take one pause because now they're at the door with my books.
Okay, go and get those. I'm just gonna get these guys. This is the beauty of doing this kind of show. That's absolutely fine, guys. It's nice to see you, Haroon Rabbani's. Yes, smoothly done. Thank you very much, Ashley Rogers. Nice to see you there. Genius Spot, love it. Will King, it's nice that you're joining us as well. Siri Yates, what came first? The chicken or the egg? I think tap into my genius when I'm happy. Absolutely, that's exactly what we've been talking about just now, and the fact that when you are actually in a happy state, you tend to actually find your genius points. Lavelda Smith, Ketan, you were killing it in these interviews. I swear you live on here now. I actually do, yeah, and I'm looking forward to interviewing you at 8:30 on Friday. Oh yes, we're going to be talking about that very, very soon, Lavelda, in a second. Your book. Anthony Daxmer's here, Chirag Patel. Wow, this is extremely refreshing to hear you, both of you, share your experiences and thoughts. Totally awesome. Sarah Yates, what energy am I bringing to this now? Brilliant assessment. Lavelda, totally agree that the best work is done when we're in flow. So, you, Andrea, you have a book out already. I thought maybe you could tell a little bit about what the book is about, how you kind of got to writing this book, and what people can get out of it, really. Okay, you have to get your volume back up.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to cough in your ear. So this is changing the energy entirely. This new book is called The Orgasm Prescription for Women, 21 Days to Heighten Pleasure, Deeper Intimacy, and Orgasmic Bliss. Yeah. Ketan, this has been quite an interesting journey. I always say for my authors, writing a book is a journey. Yeah. It's a journey of self-exploration, facing your fears. About 10 years ago, I was faced with many people in my anti-aging practice that were saying, okay, I've got my hormones straight, I've got my nutrition straight, but the sex department was kind of lacking. Mm-hmm. And you know how it is when you're with a client one-to-one or a couple, it's very easy to have conversations about helping them have better sex. Mm-hmm. But I was on television and I shared with Dr. Oz on this TV show that I expect that my female clients should have at least 3 orgasms a week. And it's an indicator of their health. So people were shocked. They were like, what? But I was talking about it in the context of diabetes and high blood pressure. Mm-hmm. Because if you have high blood sugar or high blood pressure, you're going to impact the circulation and the nerve conduction to your lady parts, ladies. And men too. Erectile dysfunction, that's all I need to say. But what happened after being on that TV show is I started getting people calling me and emailing me saying, I don't have diabetes, I don't have high blood pressure, but I'm not having 3 orgasms. What's wrong with Or I can't have orgasms with my partner, but I can have them by myself. Or I can't have them with penetrative sex alone. So I was thinking, okay, I don't want to talk to everyone about their sex life. But over the years, I discovered how many women in particular were suffering because they weren't fully able to express and enjoy their sensual side. And I ended up interviewing 1,000 women around the world from different levels of life, sex therapists, sex coaches, love and relationship therapists. And I decided to write, finally, with a little bit of nudging from those Icelandic goddesses I told you about, who helped me create Make Your Mark Global. They said, look, this information has to be out there. And nobody was really bringing together conventional medicine, Chinese medicine, psychology, spirituality, tantra, mindfulness, all of that in one place. And so it's a 300-page book, but we're literally helping women transform the way they look at themselves, their bodies, their relationship with their beloved. And yes, they are having more orgasms. But you know, it's funny because I always tell people that I, Andrea Pennington, I am a client of Make Your Mark Global. So my publishing company and my branding company takes care of this brand. So there are times when I'm like, do I really want to get up and talk about sex on daytime TV? Well, yes, if my fundamental, core value is that everyone should feel optimal well-being and feel fully expressed, then if I have something that can share or transform that, then I'm going to share it. So it's been fun bringing this to the world. We have a 21-day program that's totally free online. And for anyone who buys the book, either the digital or the print book, if you send us the receipt, you will get the audio book for free. And that's kind of nice because there's all these little sexy stories in the book too. So, just saying.
You've just taken it to another level. I think you've just taken that whole branding thing to another level. There's an audio book, and then there's audiobooks, and then there's Andrea Pennington's audiobook. So that's amazing. I remember seeing. I think you were recently on the morning show. I think it's with Phil and
Philip and Holly.
I just remember. I think Holly was kind of on the edge to during your interview, and I think Philip was just like, "Oh my God!" I think that you can see from his face. So I suppose you get a little bit of an imbalance of embarrassments and stuff like that. But look, this is just another great example of how you're putting the spotlight on your expertise, but you're doing it in a way where it's not just, hey, I know everything. You've done 1,000 interviews. You've brought all this intelligence together, and it's almost as if you're connecting all the joints. So your expertise is about building the connectivity together, which is just sensational. And I think this is something that people really need to sort of understand, that whatever industry they're in, they don't need to be at the top on the prime of their knowledge. It's about having to understand how you apply all the threads together to make that cloth. That's just sensational.
Exactly. Because very few experts are really a one-stop shop. We are all bringing in expertise and insights from various disciplines, modalities, and industries, and that's a valuable space to be in. It's what you're doing by connecting us with all these experts who are talking about disruption, but in so many different ways that you can put it together. And we now trust you, so that when we see something come up in our Facebook feed from you, we are already getting a sense of your vibe, what you stand for, what you care about, that you're really going to ask deep questions. And that's what branding is at its very best.
I will take that as a compliment that I'm doing it right from the expert of branding. So Andrea, we've actually come to the end of time. I can't believe how hours just go very, very quickly. Right, where can people get the book from? How can people tune into your 21-day program stuff? Is there any? If anyone's out there that wants to work with you, how can they get in touch with you? Could you give us some sort of links and stuff, please?
Yes, you can get the book at any bookseller, but amazon.co.uk, amazon.com. If you want more information on how to get the free stuff, like the 21-day program and the audios and the meditations, learning how to have orgasm without anybody even touching you, visit orgasmprescription.com.
Okay.
And if you come to my website, andreapennington.com, you'll find everything there as well, including how to get in touch with me. And if you have a message or a product or a service that you feel could really transform at least 1 million lives out there, then you can visit me at makeyourmarkglobal.com.
Wonderful. So what we're going to do is Andrea will get those all those links over to me. I'll add them into the posts themselves. For anyone that's watching this sort of halfway through, we will actually have all of these recordings put onto the YouTube playlist, so you can go back and watch the full interview. Andrea Pennington, it's been an amazing hour. I really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your day. You know, have to run back and forth with the book and stuff to spend with us, to really share your wisdoms and stuff like this. And you know, I wish you all the best with the book and stuff. I know that there are some people out there that are definitely going to get the book, because I can see people saying, this is an interesting book. Just some last comments before you go. Sarah Yates has been talking about the energy that she's bringing in and the brilliant assessments of what you said. Lavelda's agreeing. She was a bit shocked, and she goes, there's a complete change of direction in our conversation, but 1,000 interviews is a huge number. Sounds like a very interesting book. And Tamara Endley has just come in and said, Andrea, you are fabulous. I love your energy. Love you. So,
thank you.
So there's a lot of love. We finished Tuesday morning with love. So
I love it. That's wonderful. Well, Ketan, I just want to honor you first and foremost for holding this space for these kinds of conversations that go deep, where we can talk about consciousness and soul and heart. I really do want to honor you and acknowledge you for that, because it takes people like you who are willing to create the space where we can all grow, where we can all evolve, and I'm just grateful. So thank you so much. I want to thank for everyone who's tuned in and sending tons of love out from the south of France.
Fantastic, and I really appreciate your comments on that as well. And that's what it's here for. It's to really kind of help people sort of come out. And so look, have a great rest of your day. Hopefully there's not more disturbances you're going to get with posts, books in the post and stuff. Guys, if you're watching this right now, make sure you're going out and getting that book. Even if you're a guy, get it for your woman then at the end of the day. So look, guys, that's it for now. At 2 o'clock this afternoon, we've got Michael Sower coming on. Other than that, my name's Ket McCrona. This is the League of Disruptors Show, and I'll see you guys soon.